This is the eVox KAB electric bike, and I've got to preface this review by saying this is kind of like a prototype or like pre-production model. The guy was telling me that the headset might not look quite like this, the head tube, that the bars might be a little bit different. We might see some other fine-tuning, maybe the saddle. But otherwise, I asked him, like, are you sure this is coming out? Because I don't want to review it if, and he's like, yeah, it is. You can see the branding KAB. Comes in a couple different colors. It looks kind of cool, and it's got that like sloping top tube. Comes in a few different sizes, and it's reasonably priced. This is going to be $21.99. eVox is a Canadian company. I hadn't seen them a whole lot over in the US, but they do sell to both countries. Decent warranty, and they have another model called the City, which I'm going to review, and it has like a deep kind of step through it. It almost looks like a city bike, like a share bike, something that would be good for rentals, a little bit tougher, whereas this is more nimble. It's a little bit lighter weight. It's only 45 pounds, which is pretty impressive to me. In the world of electric bikes, a lot of models are like in the 50 to 60 pound range. There are a few different battery options, so you can kind of step it up in terms of range that you're going to get, and it's a 48 volt pack, so it's pretty peppy. It's kind of nice. What really sets it apart though is that you can see there's two things going on in the back here. There's like a cluster, so like you're used to seeing, that you pedal with and everything. Love that they got a bash guard up here, and this is fine. 8-speed Shimano Acera, kind of like mid-level stuff. And then there's this flywheel thing over here with the belt drive, and it's nice. They got this kind of like grooves so that the belt should stay on track, and it enters into the motor on the other side. This is a mid-drive motor, and it's something that I've never seen or tested before. It's actually pretty responsive, and what's nice about having a mid-drive is low weight, and usually you could kind of leverage your cassette, so as you shift gears you empower the motor. You don't get that here. You kind of just get the single like speed, one big cog in the rear. But you can still shift gears as a human, and by not having the motor pull on your chain, you're not going to get as much wear. You're not going to grind down those teeth on those sprockets. You don't have to worry about shift sensing or anything. This isn't the most sophisticated system. You can see that there are magnets on the other side of this chain ring here, and there are 20 of them, and it just uses Cadence Sensing assist. Like I can't confirm that there's no torque sensing, but I didn't really experience that, and it's got the ring there, so that's kind of interesting. On their city bike, I noticed that the levers had motor inhibitors, so when you pull the brake, it sends a signal to cut power, and you usually have to have that if you're going to have a cadence sensor. This one, they've got hydraulic disc brakes hooked up, which is nice. I like hydraulic disc brakes. That's one of the upgrades, because there's different pricing on this. But there's no motor inhibitors, at least on these ones. So again, it's pre-production, but I would definitely hope that they'll add motor inhibitors later, because this isn't the most responsive motor. It doesn't cut out super quickly like Bosch or like the Bros system. Those ones, it's relying on torque as well as cadence and wheel speed. Whereas this one, again, I'm not really sure, so I don't want to speak down to the bike, but that's something that I would keep in mind. This one is class 1, pedal assist only. There's no throttle. The City had a throttle, and that's going to mean that this is usable in different geographies, like in different parts of town. Class 1 is like the most widely accessible electric bike. You can take it most places, whereas the throttle kind of changes. It's class 2. So, it's neat that it does that, but the guy was telling me, oh yeah, it goes 23 miles per hour. 20 miles per hour is kind of the top speed in the US, so maybe this one's just tuned up. Sorry to be sparse on the details, but I wanted to get a look at this thing. It is kind of cool. It's got internally routed cables, kind of has that BMX look and feel to it. Decent Alex rims here. We got some nice tires, Maxxis Roamers. They're 700 by 42C, so that's like 28-inch, kind of city or road size. Got the stainless nipples, double-walled rims, a little bit tougher. Again, I feel like it's kind of like a standard bike. There's no suspension. It's a rigid fork, all aluminum, a little bit stiffer, but that's part of what makes it lightweight and keeps it a little bit more affordable, makes it a little easier to put on your car. Love that the battery's integrated. One thing I don't love about the battery though is that you have to press the power button right there before you can power on the display, so that you press power there and then you press and hold the M button there and your display comes to life. This display is not removable. It does swivel a little bit forward to back. It's kind of normal, I'm used to seeing you got speed here, you got 5 ticks for battery. I love that there's also a battery percentage, because sometimes 5 ticks is kind of like, 20%. You could go from feeling like you still got 20% to 0 pretty quick, whereas the percentage is more precise. Pedal assist level, so that's, you can kind of go down to 0 and just ride this like a bicycle, or up to 5, and you're going to get increasing power and performance. And I've noticed, at least my experience has been, that you do have to arrow up a little bit higher to actually feel like the bike's helping you. And sometimes it's nice to have lower levels that are slow, and it gets you through the park or through the crowded spaces a little bit more cautiously. But if you have to arrow up to like level 4 or 5 to actually feel like it's assisting you and getting that higher speed, the range on this might not be quite as good. And of course, I'm not testing it today, like fully draining the battery pack or anything, so I would welcome people in Canada who might be more familiar with this brand to kind of chime in and provide their feedback. I like that this has Bosses here for adding a rear rack potentially. It makes this more utilitarian. I'd love it if they put some Bosses here on the seat tube, so you could add a bottle cage or folding lock or a mini pump. Then as I was looking around, it's like, okay, it's even got Fender Bosses, holes, so you can mount fenders a little bit easier. Then I looked down here and I didn't see Bosses for the struts, for like the support arms. So I hope that's something else that they add. I hope that they add a slap guard down here. There's lots of room for them to, dial this thing in, but it's a pretty solid foundation, and it would be nice too if they had a suspension fork option, or if they lowered the price, because at around $2,200 for the base model, the smallest battery pack, it's not the most affordable thing, and right now it's not the most comfortable either. What you're really getting is kind of a unique drive system that should be kind of efficient. It's definitely quiet, and maybe a little bit of a slightly higher top speed. So I'm gonna hop on this thing and pedal assist 5 and just give it a go. Kind of fun grips here, foam locking. So I don't know if you could hear it, but it was definitely like still going after I stopped pedaling. And you don't want that to force you into traffic or something. So it's kind of mixed. Cadence Sensing is cool because you don't have to push so hard, you don't have to overexert yourself when riding, but it's not as responsive. Without those brake levers, like I just keep bringing that one up. I hope that they find some hydraulic disc brake levers that are e-bike specific. I think these ones right here are Tektro. Tektro does make a lot of e-bike stuff. So they just need to dial that in. It'd be cool if they added some lights too, or some other options, maybe like a USB charging port. And actually, I spoke too soon. There it is down there. They actually do have a charging port and a USB, that little cover. This one doesn't have a kickstand, and I don't know if that's because it's not going to, or maybe that's just part of the demo process again. Let's get closer. You can kind of peel this back. Oh, you know what? It says USB, but there's tape over it, so I'm not sure what the deal is. This is the charging port though, and if you're charging it on the bike, just be careful that crank arm could come around and kind of get hung up on the wire, and you don't want to bend the pins or anything. I'm fairly familiar with other packs like this. It's got the locking core. It's decent, and again, internal cable routing on this side, and there's a cutaway in this frame. It's actually kind of a fancier frame because they got to get that belt on somehow. You can't cut the belt and like sew it back together. You have to go through the frame. So that's kind of interesting. The disc brake on that side. Get a little bit of a closer look on that. So cool. This is kind of an interesting review here. I don't have quite as much information to provide, but I've done my best. Just at least give you a first look at this thing. Hopefully we'll see more from eVox in the future. Maybe I'll get to go spend some time with them up in Canada and see some other models, but for what it's worth, that's it. I got all the rest of the specs and measurements that I took back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, when you're out there riding, be safe, have fun, and stay warm.